Good afternoon, everybody. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope all is well. What's up, Glenn, Rodney, Sheila, Dr. Felicia? It's good to have you guys on. I'm excited to talk about this specific series because it came up as I was working with a client, as most of my topics often do come up with working with clients. And I wanted to specifically review and address this hot topic of how we have profit leaks in our business, And so I wanted to go into depth specifically in this series and start off with a hot topic that I discovered with one of my clients, and that is with identifying scope gaps. All right, identifying scope gaps. Now, welcome you all on. Listen, I want this to be interactive if possible. So go ahead, if you're able, drop your name, your company name in the chat. All right, go ahead and do that for me. All right, if y'all with me, I want you to go ahead, drop your name, company name in the chat. I know you registered, it's all good. But this is also a networking opportunity. I'm going to say that again. This is a networking opportunity. So as you're on the line, you may find someone else that is able to glean from the services that you provide. So drop your name, your company name, your information in the chat. And if they need your services, you never know. You all can link up. All right. So we're going to get right into it today, dealing with this issue. How many of you have identified, hey, man, I missed that? Whether it was in your bid, whether you were on site and you discovered something that you missed, or you assumed somebody else was going to do it. If that's you, drop a 1 in the chat. If you can come off mute, say that's me. Anybody on the call now? You all, what's up, Liz? What's up, Jessica?
Hey, that was me.
Yeah. If you understand that it happens, it happens. This is construction. As much as we want to cover everything, that's why they have a word called contingency. That is why they have a word called contingency. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get ready to get started. And we're going to record this so we'll also have it available. Let me go ahead and record this so we'll have it available for you.
Recording in progress.
Yes. So if you're like me in your construction business and you discover, oh man, we missed that. Oh, we had a problem here. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't think of that. Right? Or you assume someone else was going to do something specific that you are required to do. I'm going to say that again. Or you assume that someone else was going to do something specific that you are required to do. We call that a scope gap. A scope gap. And I want you all to know that scope gaps can cost you your business. I'm going to say that again for all you all that's coming on. Happy birthday, Frederick. I gotta stop and pause for the calls. My man Cedric, listen, happy birthday, man. I hope you're enjoying your time. You know, I didn't expect to see you tonight. I just interrupted the whole program just to tell you happy birthday. Oh man, look like you're traveling. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about another one of the largest things that could drain the profits out of our business. Now, listen, if we're not making any money, it's hard to stay in business, okay? And I can attest to that. I've lost as much money as I've made, and it's crazy. And so that's why I have such a passion and an inspiration to help all of you, because I want you to be able to glean from my mistakes. It's just like a parent with children, right? My son's on here, Malachi. I want you to be able to learn from my mistakes and start from my shoulders, right? And so I want you all to get this. So let's go right into the notes. So what we're going to talk about tonight is identifying construction scope gaps, how to prevent costly mistakes, and how to build a bulletproof project execution plan. And I really want to go through that. But let me hear from you. What are some of the scope gaps you all have discovered in your business? Or what are some of the things you run into while doing business, some of the gaps you run into? You can come off mute. It's hard for me to monitor the chat, but if you can come off mute, let's just go around. I'll start with I'll just call names since y'all don't like to volunteer. Jessica, what's some of the scope gaps you've run into?
Permitting on certain jobs.
Permitting. Like what specifically with permitting? Can you think?
There was a plumbing job. There was a bathroom renovation job with the city where we had to remove a toilet and remove the stalls and reposition it back into the same spot. But I didn't realize that a permit was required for that.
Okay, perfect. Great example. Who else? Somebody else come off mute. What's another scope gap you ran into before? Let's talk about it.
And do the top units?
One of my scope gaps is because I'm into multi-family renovations.
Mm-hmm.
My scope gap always I have to compare with, even though there's pricing that's out there for that what you can do particular item for, there's still just standard pricing that multi-families do it. So I'm gonna always have to stay in their category, in that pricing category.
Okay, got you. Right. So oftentimes it's a challenge. Let me put you on mute. I hear your wife. I hear your wife talking. She always doing business. So yes, right. There's some things you will run into over and over again, and that's where it's so important to learn from your mistake, right? If you can just say one and done, hey, I got my education, I paid for my education, I tell you all this all the time, those of you that are my clients, unfortunately, you always going to pay for your education. Whether you paying a coach, mentor, consultant like me, whether you paying somebody else to come fix it, right?
Even you too,
or right, or one way or another, you're going to pay for your education. So you just got to think about, okay, do I want to minimize how much I pay? And so the thing is, if you've gone through it once, make yourself a promise that you won't go through it again. I'm going to say that again. If you have gone through it once, if you have lost money due to a scope gap once, make up in your mind that you won't lose money on it again. And so what is required to keep you from making the same mistakes over and over again? So I want to deal with that just for like 2 minutes real quickly, because most of us don't realize sometimes we are apt to making the same mistakes over and over again. And if we don't put something in place to prevent us from making the same mistakes over and over again, right, it will become a repetitive cycle that can cost us our business. A repetitive cycle that can cost us our business. So sometimes you may have to put a person in place. Sometimes you may have to put a system in place, right? So I want you to start thinking about, hey, what can I do? Let me start listing out. We'll talk about this at the end. Let me start listing out the things that have been a gap over and over again. Let me write it down so it's clear. Put it on the refrigerator, put it on the marker board, put it on all your staff's computer, whatever you have to do. Let's make sure it's in front of us if it's a system we need to put in place, whether it's a checklist, whether it's a software, whether it's a person, right? I need a person to catch this. Maybe AI won't catch this. I need somebody physically to go in, and whatever it is, we have to say, hey, I have to do something different, because if I don't change, it won't change. Michael, you preaching now. You preaching. He in the preaching bag now. If you don't change, it won't change. And so let's go into our topic today. What is a scope gap? It's a work or responsibility that is not clearly assigned to a contractor or subcontractor. That's often how it's most identified. And the impact, of course, budget overruns, delays to projects, missed inspections, and oftentimes all of this can turn into legal exposure, regardless if you're the contractor or the subcontractor. And so I don't know if you're running into this or not, but on government contracting, most government contracts have what's called liquidated damages. And that means if you do not meet their deadline, they're going to assess a penalty. It could be $500 a day, $1,000 a day, whatever they desire it to be. It will be in your contract. And so you need to be aware of that. If you are a subcontractor, where are my subcontractors? If you're a subcontractor, that means sometimes you're not the prime contractor. That means you're not always in privity with the owner, right? Now, I want you all to get this. This is really, really important. I can't see some of your faces, so I really want you to get this. Some of you are held to liquidated damages and don't know it. Why? What you mean, Michael? What you mean I don't know it? Because you may have signed a subcontract that says, because I know it's in my subcontract, you may have signed a subcontract that says everything that is in the prime contract flows down to the subcontract. That means if I'm held to that clause, you're going to be held to that clause. That's why I put it in my subcontract. Why? Because I need to protect myself. If my subcontractor makes a mistake, I don't want to eat it. That's another gap. So I make sure my contract language is going to flow down to the subcontractor that made a mistake. So if they mess up, well, guess what? They have to pay for it, not me. And some of you could be in that situation, that predicament where you signed a subcontract that says, hey, everything that's in the prime contract also is applicable to this contract. Now, you got to read your contracts to know that. Okay, now if that's the case, let me ask you a question. Man, I wish you all come on screen. Now, if that's the case, you have to ask for a copy of the executed prime contract. So if you ever work for a general contractor, if you're a sub, listen, you all know I teach operate in all levels of business. You can be the prime, but sometimes you can be the sub. That could be another revenue stream. If you ever are working as a sub, always request the prime contract. Whoever that GC is with the owner, request it. Why? Because you need that information so you're prepared. All right, let's keep going. So let's talk about the scope process. Number one, we try to define what the project scope is. This is good for you, Jessica. We have to define what that is. And so oftentimes the architect may start this process because they're meeting with the client most often. But sometimes they'll hire a general contractor and say, hey, this is what I want. And you may end up doing a design build where now, as the general contractor, you're hiring an architect to work with you. And so it's important to define the program. What is the program? That means what do they want on the project? So you run into this also, Frederick, where you're having to work with the client and what they want and their needs. So you got to define the program. Well, what is that? And then during this next step, we have stakeholders that's over that area. Sometimes it could be the utilities company, the water company, the power company, cable company, anybody that has input on what happens on that project. So you want to make sure you gather all this information from all the stakeholders. So sometimes you could be missing that information. Then you want to go through all the architect and engineer documents. That's AE docs, architect engineer documents. That means I need to make sure that I'm going through all the drawings and all the specifications. Now listen, and I'm going to say this again at the end. A lot of us that can read plans, we skip, y'all with me? We skip the little notes on the drawings. How many of y'all like to read? Anybody? How many of y'all like to read? Most of us, if we're honest, don't like to read. And we will read the drawings and watch the diagrams and the stick figures and all that, but we don't read the notes. And sometimes written on the drawings, on the drawing notes. Sometimes there's something in the specification that we overlooked that was required. So we want to make sure we go through all the architecture and engineer documents. Sometimes this could also include, for an example, for new construction, it could be geotechnical reports. That means soils borings. It could be environmental reports, meaning we did lead testing, asbestos testing, right? That's also part of these documents. So sometimes you have to be aware, okay, what are all the documents that's also required? Because it's not always just a floor plan, right? It's not just always participate. I know it's Friday night, but I'm on here with you. It's Friday night, but I'm on here with you. You all got to come off mute. So think about, what does constructability review mean? What does that mean to you? Somebody come off mute and tell me. What does that mean?
How are you going to build?
Exactly. How are you going to build it? So, like Malachi, you do low voltage. So, in your case, right, when you start thinking about constructability, let's say, for instance, you get a set of drawings and they say, hey, they want a couple, data drops. They want you to run, Cat 8, I don't know, from one room, to a room that's probably 300 yards down. And all of a sudden, you look at the plans and you say, okay, I can do this, seems simple. But if you don't go do a site visit, are y'all with me? If you don't go do a site visit and realize that you got to, right, you got firewalls, you got to go up 30 feet to get up into the attic space or get up into the trusses, and go through the trusses, and you got to go through tilt wall, and you got to go through, all that, right? So constructability. So you can have a gap if you don't know what you have to do, right? So now you have to start looking at, okay, now there's a way to cover these gaps, and we'll talk about that later, right? By having what we call clarifications in your proposal, exclusions in your proposal, that can help protect you initially, okay? But we want to make sure that we are crystal clear when we are putting our proposals together, that we are eliminating gaps in anything that can come back to us. Because if I just put a price together based on the drawings and I didn't go do a site visit, now all of a sudden the client doesn't know that I haven't taken that in consideration. So there's no communication. There's now another gap because everyone's making an assumption. The owner or the client is making an assumption, you know what to do. And you make an assumption that it's going to be easy. Right? And so what happens if you didn't have a conversation with the GC or with the owner and all the work has to be done overnight? Right? That could be a gap. So it's important to make sure, hey, let's talk about everything it's going to take to get this job done. And that's where constructability review comes in. Right? Then we have subcontractor verification. This is if you're a general contractor, you got to verify, or if you're a sub and you're going to have people working under you, you have to verify that they have included the things that are necessary. Because sometimes the person that's working for you may have left out things and you don't want to assume they've included it. So you want to verify the things that are required. Let's say, for instance, they could have done the same thing you did with the drawings, didn't go to the site, didn't visit the site, didn't take in consideration all the things that were going to have to be done based on constructability, but it's up to you to verify that. And then scope creep mitigation.
Gonna be needed to be done.
Well, let me be more specific because it's a little bit more detailed than that. Let's say I ask you to run a data drop for me, right? But because of whatever, you know, system I need, maybe I need Cat 8 instead of Cat 6. Well, you price Cat 6, and I say, well, Cat 8 has to be installed, right? You may say, well, Cat 8 is going to cost me more money, right? And what happens is you was like, at first you're like, well, it's not that much more money. Well, what if it's plenum rated? And so all of a sudden now what's happening is you may decide, oh, I'm not going to charge them, but the price is still going up. Your costs are still going up, but you still give them the same price. Or you say, hey, I'm going to have to send you a change order for this. Now the owner's like, oh, okay, I didn't have budget for that. So we have to be careful with scope creep. I'm sure, Frederick, Owen, you run into this all the time, right? This probably happens a lot with architects. Now, especially on the front end, you all, when you're dealing with furnishings. Go ahead.
I just experienced that actually this week.
Yeah.
With a clubhouse build out. Ownership walks in because they didn't have all the details on the plans.
Oh, yeah.
When you open a wall, you see different stuff. So now it's, am I going to eat this cost or am I going to send them a change order?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we don't have, this is our budget.
Right.
And we can't go over this budget.
Right. So that's a great example. Another example is when everybody sat down to review the program. So we're at stage 1. Everybody's at the black box. We reviewed the program. We go to the next phase, stakeholder input. We've done all that. And guess what? Now all of a sudden the architect starts drawing all of this robust stuff that's not necessary. They start adding all these expensive items. They start specifying materials that are the Cadillac version, and the owner doesn't have a Cadillac budget, right? And so now all of a sudden we have to go through what's called value engineering, right? We have to go through this exercise to try to find other materials, all because the architect and the engineer over-designed. So sometimes what I've experienced, and I know many of you haven't probably gone through this specific example, but I'm going to just tell you about my experience, especially with working with large corporations or government agencies. Sometimes they may hire you up front before the work begins, and they say, hey, we want you to work with the designer. So what will happen is we'll give what's called a phase 1 estimate. That estimate is conceptual, also called conceptual estimate. That means based on the program, here's a kind of quick number. So Glenn, just like we was talking about via email today, you know, how you kind of came up with your number for that resort is kind of similar, like something real quick, something that's conceptual that I can throw out there and put a number on pretty quick. That's conceptual, right? And then we go to phase 2 where they start having some of the drawings together, but maybe they don't have all the details. Like Malachi was mentioning, they don't have all the core drills and all the fire caulking that showed for the penetrations through the walls. They maybe don't show all those types of details, but they show wiring and where all the terminals are, right? So we have another phase where we price that. But sometimes what happens is if you're not a good estimator and don't think about how do I build this, you leave out those details, not thinking it's necessary when it actually is. And so most owners expect you to know how to price those things to give them a budget up front, okay? And that's why it's important to qualify all of your pricing, and so it's clear to everyone exactly what you have included and exactly what you haven't included, okay? But scope creep scope creep can happen, watch this, not only before the project, but it can happen once the project is started. Okay? It can happen once the project is started. Here's another example of scope creep. And I had this happen with a client I thought was going to be a good client, and it turned out to be horrible. I had the same amount of change orders added to my contract as my contract value. I'm going to say that again. I had the same amount of change orders added to my contract as my contract value. Jessica, do you know what I mean by that? Let me ask. Let me see if y'all still paying attention.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So they didn't properly estimate or properly give you the correct number on the job. Maybe something was missing.
That's possible. Absolutely. Okay, you thinking now. That's possible. Guess what else is possible? They could have just said, hey, we have this amount budgeted right now, so we're gonna start with this minimum scope. And then we're gonna add as we find funding. We're gonna start adding additional scope. Sometimes, watch this, some owners will phase a project that way. Okay? Now, this is what you have to be aware of. I want you, are y'all paying attention? Yes, yes. If you still with me, drop a 1 in the chat, because I don't know. You all got these ski masks on. I only see Sheila on the call, and she's not even in construction. All right. If you still with me, drop a 1 in the chat, because I'm trying to see what's happening here. Listen, this also is something that can happen. Some owners are nasty and sneaky. I hate to tell you that, but let you in on the secret. Some of them are, and some of them are real smart. And there are some owner contracts that will limit your profit that you're able to charge on a change order. Now, if they're able to limit your profit on a change order, think about it. Let's say, for instance, they say, hey, you can't charge more than 10% profit on a change order. Well, now you stuck with that profit amount, whereas when you first priced it, maybe you priced it with a higher profit. Now every change order is dragging your bottom line down. And the more change orders that get added to your contract is coming down further and further and further. So some owners that are sophisticated, they can backdoor you to get a cheaper price by making more scope a change order than the base contract. Well, I just put y'all on game. Everybody send me an offering. Everybody, baby, drop my cash out. Oh my God, I'm putting you on game. Listen.
Lock the door.
Lock the door. Yeah, send me an offering. I'm telling you, I just saved y'all a lot of money. Listen, there are owners that do that for real because they realize some people are not smart enough to understand that. And sometimes what happened is they had good intentions. They had good intentions originally, maybe because funding wasn't in place. Okay, if that happens, this is what you do. I see you don't have all the funding in place. You're going to phase the job, but I have the right to price this job over again at my normal profit margins. You can't hold me to a 10% or 5% profit margin. You can't hold my subs to a 5-10% profit margin if you're going to add all this scope back. Okay, now so the school district here in Orange County, they have something that's a little different. So what they'll do, their contract says, we'll limit you up to like $500,000, and then if it goes over $500,000, then you're able to reprice it. But sometimes that's not good if the job was only $100,000 and they add $400,000 worth of change orders, right? So it just depends. But listen, anyway, let me keep going. All All right, and then we want a scope documentation. That's the last phase, and this is probably one of the most important phases because this is where you guarantee you protect yourself. Why? It's in writing. Because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So scope documentation, get it in writing. Whatever that scope is, make sure it's in writing, it's executed, and it's clear. Okay? So let's talk about some common causes. Vague scopes of work. It's not really clear. Incomplete drawings or plans. Lack of coordination between trades. So if you're the GC and you're not getting your mechanical contractor, your electrical, your plumber, and having them coordinate with the framer to make sure that somebody's not having to do work twice, or somebody got to move a wall because something was laid out incorrectly, right? That's cost everybody more money because you're adding time on the job. Sometimes what's happening, you having a scope gap because we haven't done our job to coordinate trades. Hey, let's meet. Everybody that has to work with multiple people, multiple contractors, you all should have coordination meetings. Coordination meetings. Some people call it superintendent meetings, field meetings, right? So before everybody start work that day, if we have multiple people working in the same area, hey, let's meet and talk about what we all going to do. Let's coordinate who goes first, who comes next, why, who will impact who. We have to have these conversations. So I want you to think about that process as well. Sometimes a common cause is an assumption made during the bidding phase. We assumed something, but we didn't clarify. Let me tell you, I've estimated my entire career. So I graduated from the University of Florida, December 1997. Can you believe it? Great day. So this year, 28 years that I graduated from college. And I'm telling you, in all my years of experience, every year I can receive a quote from a subcontractor and they didn't include sales tax. And it doesn't say that on there. Their proposal, and I'm going to do a proposal right in class because I need to help you all because everybody on this call is still having challenges with proposals, writing proposals, okay? So we're going to do that class as well. But how are you going to give me a price and leave out the sales tax? I would think you would automatically include it. Anybody agree with me? How many? Let's do a vote. Let me see if you all still with me. How many of you agree and think when somebody give you a price, sales tax should already be included? Would you all agree?
Well, I'm a little.
My own son. Oh my gosh, let me pray for you now. In the name of Jesus.
Just get a little gap that you need to charge extra.
You should.
And that's that.
So listen, let me show you. So let me just help my son real quick. Let's say, for instance, you're dealing with a governmental agency that maybe they sales tax exempt. What you can do is, on your proposal, give them the price, and then underneath say, sales tax excluded, and then do a bullet point. If sales tax is required, add whatever the percentage is and the dollar amount. Do that. Put it on your proposal because most people going to assume your price includes sales tax. Most people going to assume your price includes everything it's supposed to. For instance, if you need a lift, if you need equipment, if you need access, right? People expect that it includes that in it. If you don't have it, say no equipment is included. Scissor lift is required but not included. If required and I have to provide it, add X amount. Listen, this not proposing right in class, but it's important for you to know if you're going to be the best out there, provide your client options. If you're going to be the best. Some people say, well, I kind of use it to be low. Well, guess what? What if somebody drops the ball and all of a sudden somebody forgets that something is not included, or somebody assumes it's included, you didn't include it, and now all of a sudden you're in an argument. Now the job's getting delayed, your payment getting delayed, you're in an argument with somebody, you're in a dispute, you can save all of that just by clearly identifying things in your proposal. All right, I got to keep going. Sometimes another common cause of scope gaps is inexperienced project managers or estimators. Okay, now I know everybody's trying to save $1, but what happens is you have to be careful. Okay, so these are some of the gaps that have experienced, right, with proposals. We have poor quality control due to hard bid deadlines, right? Just knows what I'm talking about in regards to this, right? Because we're moving so fast, we're just trying to get the bid in. And listen, I started my career doing hard bids, so I get it. I understand. All you're trying to do is get the number in. Give me the number, get it in. But if we don't take time to make sure all the scope is identified and verified, right, then what happens is it could cost us. And so sometimes if we don't have enough time to bid a job, so you got to be careful. It's saying, hey, let's go after this, and you only have 3 days to get the bid in, right? Well, did you allot enough time to do a thorough job? So you got to be careful with that. Yeah, I know you wanted that job, but if you don't have enough time, will you be able to put in the quality control to make sure you don't lose money? Yes, are y'all with me? Okay. Another thing I've experienced, overlook smaller trades as a non-priority. What does that mean? So let's say, for instance, my site work, if I'm doing new construction, my site work, maybe my concrete, whatever, my MEP trades, I'm scoping them heavily, but I didn't think about the person that's doing my doors and hardware, so I didn't scope them. Or the person that's doing my windows. And let's say I'm in South Florida and I have to have impact glass. Well, I didn't even think. I'm assuming, hey, you're in South Florida, you should price it. Right? So I just take the number. All of a sudden, I didn't realize they didn't include it. They included regular glass. Lack of detailed takeoff. Now, this is the number one, to me, this in my opinion, and because I've have 27 years of estimating experience, in my opinion, this is the number one reason you all have more scope gaps. Lack of detailed takeoff. Lack of detailed takeoff. Michael, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is, if you're not thoroughly taking off everything that's required to do the job, most likely you're going to forget something. Most likely there's going to be a gap. Most likely you're not going to think about, watch this, constructability. See, what I've noticed, just in my experience, anytime I just start taking bids and taking quotes and don't do a detailed takeoff, I'm not thinking about what are the things that they don't have. I don't have it written down in front of me. Now, you can do something quick where, you know, you can start thinking about, hey, let me just maybe create a general checklist of things to ask. But what happens is you're missing what is required based on the contract documents, okay? What's required by the program. And so you can easily miss these things and don't list these things to do a checklist just by receiving the quotes, okay? And so oftentimes I realize that is the largest mistake. And so that requires maybe a new skill set for your staff or your company. You need someone to be able to do a detailed takeoff, read the plans, read the specification, read all those other documents that may be included on the job that say, hey, we need this in order to make sure we don't have scope gaps. Okay, I was doing a estimate. Let me see, they on here. Yeah, Jess, I was doing that estimate for that job in Miami. And come to find out, one of the contractors that Dr. Fidel had got a quote from, they left out like half of the scope. I sent them a long email and I said, do you have this? I literally list about 20 things. They were supposed to price the shell of the restaurant and some of the site work. And I saw about 20 things. I'm like, do y'all have this? And I sent him an email. He said, no, we don't have any of that. We were just told to give a quick number. I said, oh my God. And then we run off with that number thinking it's legit. And honestly, that number was probably about $400,000 short. Okay, let me keep going. Y'all tired of hearing that. Okay. Let's talk about contract scope. Okay, here's another really important one. If you all are in the portal, some of you all haven't been in the portal in a while. You need to get back in the portal, start watching what you missed. Here's another large mistake. Didn't RFI any excluded items. Now, this is really, really important as you all move into government work. So, this has happened time and time again. A specification exists, right? A written spec for, let's just say, wood, carpentry. And that carpentry spec says that this material has to be, you know, a special forestry stamped. I forget what they call it now, but I can't think of the name. It's a certain term, but it's a special species of wood. It has to, you know, be kiln dry for a certain amount of hours, and it has all this documentation it has to go through a process for. And you just price regular wood out of Home Depot. Okay? And this wood that's in the spec is 3 times more. Now, you may say, hey, I don't understand why they're asking for this special wood when it's not really necessary. Okay? So don't just make an assumption and say, I'm going to just price what I want. No, send the RFI. Okay? Here's another situation I run into. Mechanical contractors do this all the time. The spec called for a 10-year warranty. That client, that owner told the architect to put that in the specification because that's what they wanted. So everybody go to Train, hey, you know, give me a price for this. Train just send a regular price. It only is a 5-year warranty. Well, the client wanted 10-year. Don't assume, do not assume that the 5 years okay. No, say, hey, did you price 10-year? Go back to Train. Did you price 10? Is it an additional cost for 10-year? Is a 10-year warranty available? They'll say yes, but it's another $5,000. Okay, fine. Give me that price. I'll send it on to the client. So always send the RFI. Here's another example. Sometimes there are third-party engineering that's required. So in the specification, let's say for drywall metal studs, in the specification it'll say engineering for the limiting heights, or engineering for the wall, the studs is required as a document to be turned in for review. And some people will give you a price, and then when you start the job, you're like, hey, send me your submittals, and also, hey, send me your engineering, because that's what's in the specification. And then all of a sudden, they was like, we didn't price that. You didn't even know to ask them because you assumed they priced the whole spec. So sometimes you have to go through the specification and look for those types of things to pull out and say, hey, did you include this? Did you include this as a part of your checklist? Are y'all with me? And if there is a question, because MEP contractors are notorious for this. I've been doing this for 30 years and we never done it. We never had to do a water test on these windows before, ever. I've been doing this 20 years. They'll all tell you the same thing. We never had to do it. Well, if that client put it in the spec, maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Let's send the RFI to verify. That's the whole purpose of an RFI. So don't just ever assume, even if it's there. You can still say, hey, just want to double check. Please confirm this specific thing is still required. Make sense? Boy, man. Babe, where my wife at? They don't know how much value I'm giving them right now. I don't think they, baby, I feel so, I feel so undervalued right now. I don't know what's going on. I'm putting money in their pockets. Oh my goodness. Let me keep going. I can't get an amen or nothing. All right. So here's another common gap I've experienced. Schedule duration accountability. Like, what does that mean? Often not keeping our subs accountable to the schedule. So sometimes that becomes a gap. And for me, as a general contractor, if my subs take longer to get the job done than I figured, now guess who that's costing? That's costing me, because I have staff on the job that's out there longer, right? So we're spending more time with our people, our management team. We're spending more time with our, maybe if we have a portalet or dumpsters or whatever, we're spending more money for that. So how are you keeping your subs accountable to keep the time constraints? Did you give them a schedule when you started the job? Did you say, hey, you have this amount of durations? Did you agree to these durations? If so, the instruction is not having pre-start meetings. Not having pre-start meetings. So before someone starts installing, you want to do a pre-start meeting, right? If you're a sub and you have a team that's working, you want to have a pre-start meeting. Before we start, let's talk about all the parameters, what's necessary, do we need protection? Like, let's have a pre-start meeting, and then QC of correct materials. Now, government contract side, they're going to make you pull it out. If you install the wrong material that wasn't specified or wasn't approved in the submittal, they will make you come tear it out at your expense, replace it, and do it on overtime because you just delayed the job. And if there's additional expense because the job is delayed, they're going to back charge you for that too. So now you just ate it twice. Okay? Are y'all right? All right, who has questions? Let's talk. Let me take a pause. Because I have way more content, but I know it's Friday night and you all getting ready to go party and stuff. So you all come off mute, talk to me. Any questions?
Yeah, I could jump on really quickly. You touched on a few things. The biggest thing is that I wrote down was the coordination meeting. Would those be weekly? Would those, I mean, obviously those would be required. Do you have kind of like a structure to how they're held? Do you have some type of like training that you've had so far? I mean, previously that I could just go ahead and refer to in the course?
I have not done the training on that specifically, but I don't mind doing it. Yeah, I don't mind doing it. So as far as structure, framework for any meeting, yes, that's something we can do. We could talk about, we can work together on. But it's pretty simple. But let me address the first question in regards to frequency. It depends on what it is, okay? On site, in the field, whoever is managing the job should be having daily coordination meetings. Every day. Every day before we all get started, everybody should know what's happening. When I was at my Disney job, I used to wear my subs out. When I come out there, I want to know, okay, what's the plan for the day? Matter of fact, I want, by Sunday night, if we're working days, by Sunday night, I want a schedule of what you are working on for the week. And then when I come to the site, we're still going to talk about, okay, what's happening today, because we're going to talk about it amongst all the trades. Hey, they're going to be over here doing this. We're going to be there. There may be safety issues, right? If somebody's working overhead, you know, if we, you know, or we have something that could be a hazard. Like, we need to be talking about those things. So in the field, we should be doing it daily. And it doesn't have to take long. It doesn't always have to be formal where you got a sheet of paper and you got an agenda. It doesn't always have to be that formal. But in the field, every day we should have a coordination meeting before everybody goes to work. Let's talk about what we're all doing. Let's see if anyone's going to impact the other person. Are there any inspections? You know, drywall guy, you can't close up our MEP because they haven't been inspected yet. Like, we're going to talk about all those things. On the project management side, it may be more weekly, right? So it should be no less than weekly on the project management side. So maybe you have documentation that has to be turned in. Hey, I still don't have your submittals. I still need this. When are your materials coming, when they've been delivered? I'm following up on schedule. Hey, this is coming in the next 2 weeks. Are you all ready? I know this material, like this piece of equipment, was going to take 2 or 3 months to get. Have you called them to follow up to make sure it's going to show up on time? Like, we're talking about that kind of stuff weekly, So we have our RFI log. Hey, we had a question that we sent to the architect. Here's the response. Any other issues, right? We're going through all of that. So your project, and maybe I can put that in the portal for all my clients. I can put in the portal, examples. I probably have some up there, but I don't know where they are. But examples of like an agenda where we go through RFI logs, submittal logs, schedule, talk about any conflicts, any issues, and that type of thing. Did I answer your question, Rodney?
Yeah, absolutely. And then with the PM side, would that be kind of like a roundtable form, like type of like setup form, where it's just like we're having that out in the open with like, all the other trades right there?
Oh, absolutely. So your project man. So this is kind of like on larger jobs. Like larger jobs, you will normally have a separate project manager from a super, meaning whoever's in the field. Smaller jobs, it could be the same person. If it's the same person, you still want to separate the meetings because they're dealing with different issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to keep your project management kind of, focus on the paperwork side of things and preparation for what's to be installed. The field meetings is actually, hey, what's going into the building, what's going into the ground, like those things that we're trying to coordinate, those things, and what we may need in order to make it happen. We're talking about those. So that's kind of, you want to kind of separate those types of activities into different meetings. Okay. Anybody else? Great question. Great question. And see, some of these things, Rodney, I don't even think about to teach because it's so much, like, literally it's so much I could teach on, and I don't always think about what to teach. So that's why I kind of wait for you all to have an issue or something I see come up that I can actually speak to and address and really help you all. So if you don't tell me, then I don't know. But that's a great thing I can do as far as, providing some forms and documentation and just put it in the portal for you all to kind of get an example of it. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions?
I guess just for a best practice, because you're talking about gaps and how to avoid it. Obviously, when you receive a couple, let's say, estimates from a couple contracts, you receive a couple bids, and you're leveling them, would you say it's recommendable just to kind of level it and then go back to the sub and say, hey, make sure you include this?
Oh, absolutely.
Bid, and then resend it back just like
absolutely.
that?
That's the only way to do it. That's the only way to do it. So I did teach this probably 1.5 years ago it's in the portal under the estimating part. I think it was part of when I did this 8-week challenge back in 2023, where I actually show what's called a bid tabulation. Just you want to catch on to this. The next time we meet, I can show you this. But a bid tabulation. So what I like to do, Rodney, when I do my detailed estimate, I put all of my takeoff items on a bid tabulation. And so I almost create like a checklist right then for comparing subcontractors. So let's say I get 3 bids. I have, let me see. I don't know if I can pull up one in time. But I normally do that for the sake of time because I really don't want to get into that. But I'll do that in a separate session. But yes, I'll say, yes, this person included all the rebar for the concrete. Yes, this person included 4,000 PSI concrete. But maybe the other contractor only priced 3,000 PSI concrete. So I'm going to say no. And then I'm going to ask them, hey, the specification asks for 4,000. Give me an ad to go from 3 to 4,000. And then when they give me that ad, I show that at the bottom as a revision to their original price. Okay? And then I make that comparison, so what we call, so they're apples to apples. Okay? Because I really can't compare them if I don't do it that way. So I create a full checklist, everything that's in the drawing for their scope, everything in the spec for their scope, and I do a true comparison. Owners supposed to do that as well, but they don't. Most people are really never trained that way. Okay? But that's the right way to do it. Any other questions? I do have a little bit more content. Any more questions? Nope. Let's keep it moving. So let me give you all some examples. I will not go through all of this in detail, so don't fret. But I just want to kind of throw out some examples for you. Other scope gaps that we can experience before construction starts. Unforeseen conditions. I think somebody mentioned that. I think Owen mentioned that. Hey, we went in there, we opened up a wall, and there's more things that, you know, was not anticipated. So you should, everybody should put on their proposal a clarification. We do not include any costs for unforeseen conditions. We do not include any costs for unforeseen conditions. That should be on everybody's proposal. Okay? That alone will protect you. So if something happens and it's not something that could have been prevented or foreseen, hey, I told you up front. All right? Just look, number 5, right down your alley. You mentioned this, and I already had bolded it. Responsibility for obtaining permits and inspections. Like, you'll be surprised how many subcontractors that should know that they have to pearl a permit will not include that in their proposal. So you need to ask them, even if it's an ad price. Hey, did you include a permit? Well, we ain't never had it. I don't care what you never had. Give me an ad. Give me an ad for it. And if we don't have to do it, well, we'll take it out your contract or we won't include it. But until I find out. So here's something you can do, Jess. In that case, you say, Jessica, let's say that sub says, hey, we never had to do that here. We don't do that over here where we are and blah, blah, blah. And I never had to do that. You'll hear all that. What you can do is say, okay, let me send the RFI. That's how you handle it. Let me send the RFI to the client and let them respond, and I get the answer. Now, when the RFI comes back with the answer, it is what it is. That's how you handle those situations. Okay? Number 15, unclear responsibility for layout and verification. I've seen this in the building, with the building pad, with concrete subcontractors, with site work subcontractors. I've seen it with both. Number 15, unclear responsibility for layout and verification. Like, who's supposed to lay out where we're going with this? Am I supposed to do it? You supposed to do it? Who's doing it? So sometimes that's a gap, right? And so who's staking out the building? Is the GC going to stake it out? Right? So for all my general contractors, you'll easily miss this if you don't put it in your site contractor scope. They're going to say, no, we're not laying this out for you. Get you a surveyor. Why? Some site contractors don't want to be responsible if the layout's wrong. So you have to have those kind of conversations. So oftentimes things like this can be discussed up front if you have the conversation. All right, here's some construction examples. Missed details for connection points between different systems. So a common one is a dry well. A dry well. A dry well is an area where, let's say,
Don't do that.
Owen, mute yourself.
Break it, then what happened?
Owen, mute yourself. Let me see if I can mute him. I got it. There you go. All right, so we want to make sure with a dry well, do we identify who's actually installing the dry well? Is the plumber installing the dry well, or is the mechanical company installing the dry well? If you don't know what a dry well is, off of a AC, air conditioning unit, you have what's called a condensate lines. That's where the water runs out, right? Well, on commercial jobs, sometimes the HVAC contractor will install their own condensate lines, but they will just run it out and it will just flow wherever it flows. Where is that water being collected? And so sometimes they'll have what's called a dry well. It's kind of like an opening where the water can go and drain into the ground. Well, most HVAC companies don't want to do that work. They consider it the plumber's job. So sometimes the plumber won't include it automatically. So you got to know things like that. And that's where we get into constructability. Who's going to do what? What about number 10? Fire stopping coordination between trades. Everybody has a through penetration. You know, your mechanical guy has pipes going through the wall. Electrical guy has pipes going through the wall. Plumber has pipes going through the wall. Who's fire stopping it all? Now, on $1 million jobs, you know, a lot of the projects I've been on, we actually hire a fire stopping company to do all the fire stopping for everybody. Sometimes that can be cheaper and faster. Okay. What about number 17? Coordination of overhead MEP systems. Coordination of overhead MEP systems. Who's going first? The duct is so big, they can't really maneuver around other pipes. So if you have it all first, and now all of a sudden there's not enough room for duct work, well, guess what? Now it's a gap. Now, you think the fire sprinkler company won't take all of that down just because No, they're going to charge you for that. So you have to think about, okay, let's talk about who's going to go first. You're going to have enough room to put in your ducts in this tight space. So, you know, sprinkler pipe, electrician, all their contractors can move around and, you know, different things because their pipes are smaller. So you have to coordinate up. All right, whether use it. So sometimes that could be a scope gap. The client say, hey, can you have somebody come in and show us how to use this stuff? And you ask your mechanical contractor, your plumber, or whoever, your sprinkler company to come and show them how to use the system. They're like, hey, you got to pay us to come back out there. That could be a gap. All right. So I'm going to just run through a couple last best practices and I'm done. So you want to use detailed scope breakouts. We talked about this earlier. And it's really for all disciplines, but you want to do it by trade. So you want to do it by however you want to procure that work. So for instance, if you want just to hire one site work contractor to do what we call turnkey, you want them to do all the underground piping, all the earthwork, you want them to do the paving. Well, you may put that all in one trade, or maybe you want to buy the asphalt paving separately and you want to hire your own pavers, right? However you want to do it, you just need to figure out how to break down the scopes, identify who's going to provide it, who's going to be installing it. Like, here's a good example. They have to provide their own sleeve, because most likely they're not going to price it. So you may have to ask them, did you provide your sleeves, your own sleeves for all your penetrations? Or maybe you're going to buy them from a steel manufacturer yourself and you provide them. You need to identify that. Okay? But the best practice, like I said earlier, is to have a detailed quantity takeoff. Okay? I said this earlier too. Identify any specification items and drawing notes. We talked about this, holding internal and external trade review meetings. So internally, externally, hold your meetings. Include your estimators, your PMs, and your subs. Make sure you have clear assumptions. What's included, excluded, what has been assumed. And you make sure you want to review this before awarding the contract and go through it in detail. So to Rodney's point, if there's something they need to add, ask for the price. And you want to try to get that in the budget. And then lastly, we talked about this. Listen, you all don't make the same mistakes over and over again. create you a log, create you a checklist, create you a cheat sheet where you can actually write down the things you often miss. Okay, so start tracking this. Write a description of the gap. Who's responsible? What's the solution? And then another reason why this is important is because you have now created a process for your entire company, because hopefully you're going to grow and someone else is going to be responsible for this as well. So you don't want them making the same mistakes you made, right? And so you just learned from the mistakes. Now you know, but you didn't share the information. So make sure you make the information available for your whole team so they also learn and glean from it. All right. Well, I'm done, folks. Any questions? I hope it was good to me. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I felt like I just preached to myself all night. Was this okay for everybody?
Yes.
Thank you, Sheila. Oh, Sheila, we're going to make you a contractor yet, huh? All right. Glenn, any questions?
No questions, sir.
What's your takeaway?
I need to be more detailed in any proposals I submit.
Okay. So let's do the proposal class next week. So we'll do the proposal class next week. All right. Is this time? I gotta check my schedule. Is this time good for you all? I was trying to get a survey, but I didn't get many responses. But is this time good for you all? I mean, I did have quite a few people jump on.
It's good for me.
Good for me too.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Rodney, what about you?
It works.
Okay. Because I know Friday's kind of complicated sometimes, you know, depending on what's going on. So traffic and all that stuff, payday, I get it. All right, you all, let me pray us out as I always do. Thank you all for joining us for this session. I hope you learned something. For all of my mentorship clients, we'll get this uploaded into the portal, as well as this handout. The slides are already available in the portal, okay, under today's date. All right, Father, I just say thank you for allowing us this opportunity to talk about how to identify scope gaps. And I ask that you bless each one of these business owners as they strive not only to live for you, but to fulfill their purpose here on earth. And I just pray that you bless their business, you bless their finances, increase them so they continue to grow, bring the right staff to help support them. And I just pray that you give them wisdom, that you give them clarity of vision, and Lord God, help them to implement the right systems and help them not to make the same mistakes over and over. And we just say thank you. And I ask for a special blessing over their lives this weekend. And we say thank you for all these things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you all, God bless you all. Have a great week.